Brenton, nice smile on the face. A good start to the season. How are you feeling now, a couple of days out from that first win?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it was nice to get the first round out the way. I know there's a lot of anticipation about how every club's going to play in round one, so we were obviously thrilled to get away and get a win. Come back with no injuries. Ricky Henderson's pulled up really well and looks like he'll be fine. So we got through unscathed and got a good win. So boys are happy. We roll on, keep the routine going, and yeah, round two, v Bulldogs home game will be fantastic for us.
How'd you find it in the box?
It was great. I mean, it probably helped a little bit for us because we got away to that really great start. We had 24 inside 50s in the first quarter, which is an incredible effort, and our forwards were able to lock the ball away. And I guess when we got away to that great start, the momentum just sort of kept with us for most of the game, which was good. So it was a really draining game for us. It was obviously the humidity and the weather up there, but our guys have recovered great, and they're looking forward now to Western Bulldogs this week.
Did much happen during the game where you felt you had to be challenged and perhaps change what you'd gone in with, or did it pretty much work out how you'd hoped?
No, you always got to change. I mean, we obviously have a plan in place that there's a style that we want to play, and there's a way we think we play against certain opposition as well. So you have to always make minor adjustments to the side that you're playing against. But we were constantly changing things in the box and just tinkering with different systems and structures. But to get away from the game, some room for improvements as well. I mean, that's what will just be about probably most games early in the season, is just looking at ways that we can continually improve. And watching the game again from behind the goals footage, we've still got quite a bit of work to do with some of our setups, but we've addressed them this week and hopefully we'll improve on them this week.
You said the players got a little bit cute at times. How do you address that?
Certainly Gold Coast put more pressure on the ball in the second quarter. I mean, they got a bit of a rev at quarter time, and we might have just taken the foot off the accelerator a little bit. So, we probably, the options when we had an option to kick the ball forward and we tried to handball it through traffic, at the moment doesn't suit us. I mean, doesn't really suit how we play. We've got contested ball players ahead of the play, so we'll keep kicking it to them and providing an even number contest when it hits the ground. So that's what's been working for us so far, and I guess that's the basis of our game plan that we're looking to continue to play with going forward.
So even though you won the game comfortably, what would you rate the performance out of 10?
Still a lot of improvement left in us. I know it was a 69-point win, but we still feel like there's a lot of areas, and sometimes that's coaching too. You look for perfection. I know you can never get it, but at the same time, I probably felt we did maybe 7 things out of 10. We did them well, so there's probably still a 30% improvement in the group.
So we're looking forward this week, obviously, as the season goes on, just to keep refining the game plan and good performances.
Certainly, I know the Western Bulldogs. We were fortunate because the match was on in the aeroplane as we were coming home. So a lot of our players sat and watched the Bulldogs-Eagles game on the way back from Gold Coast. So that gave our players a good insight to actually watch the Bulldogs. And I must admit, we were really impressed. Like for 3 quarters, they really put it to the Eagles, and Eagles are a great side. Got enormous respect for the Dogs. They're going to come here really wound up to make amends for their first round loss, and it's going to be a cracking game.
Just from an outsider's point of view, probably fair to say you've been a bit of everybody's mate so far during the pre-season. You've been able to have big squads and not drop too many blokes, but cut blokes. How are you going with that dynamic? Because competitive people, when they get left out, don't always respond well. And how are you managing that dynamic with the playing group?
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, the players that were left out of our final 22 went back and played some really good footy in the SANFL, which is all you can ask for, really. And it's always going to be a challenge for this group and for Port Adelaide. And when you leave players out and they go back into a different setup, into a different team, there's certainly going to be different challenges with how they play and what positions they play. But we saw some great results in the SANFL this weekend. We've got it in our change rooms now. We've got a loop of all the players who played in the SANFL, their highlights. So, the players come in off the training track and all sit around while they're having lunch watching little snippets of the SANFL. So that's a really good dynamic for our group too, is that guys that are away can come back and watch the SANFL players play. So it's a good club to be involved with that sort of dynamic.
Can you give us some insight then into what sort of a bloke you are or a coach you are when it comes to telling a bloke the news he doesn't want to hear? I mean, just give us a description as to how you describe it.
Oh, listen, there's no easy way to do it because there's obviously going to be disappointment. We left 5 players out of a grand final NAB Cup side. There's no easy way to do it. You have to just be honest and upfront, preferably face to face. but that's the challenge with coaching. It's probably the hardest thing outside of delisting players and ending their careers. But yeah, that week to week, unfortunate breaking the news to players that they're out of the side is difficult. But we're in a position where we've got depth in the squad, and the boys understand that you've got to perform while you're in the team. So there's some great pressure from underneath now, which is probably aiding our players play better on match day. There's extra pressure.
How much of a lift in class and intensity are you expecting this week, given that you've come off a game against the Suns, pretty inexperienced young side?
Oh yeah, I mean they're inexperienced, but they're certainly a good side. Like we were impressed with how they threw themselves at the contest, but they've still got a little way to go as well. The Dogs will be tough. Like I said, we saw that game coming home, and obviously I've watched it again a couple of times, and they're doing a lot of things right, the Dogs, and got enormous respect for Brendan McCartney, and I think I sort of know how he coaches. He knows how I coach, so that'll be a good challenge too, because we'll be a bit of a challenge in the coaches' boxes too, I'm sure.
Is there a difference more between, like maybe the top level of intensity and class and that sort of thing is the same, but it's just a side like the Bulldogs you'd expect it to keep it up for longer?
That might be part of it, yeah. I mean, the Bulldogs were fantastic for 3 quarters, and then it just looked like West Coast just overran them a little bit. But as soon as the Bulldogs can bring that intensity for 4 quarters, they're going to be a really hard side to beat. And they do play a really high intensity brand of football, similar to us. It's quite dynamic, so I'm sure it's going to be very entertaining and a great game to come and watch on Saturday night.
I know some coaches say the battle between the coaches' boxes is sometimes irrelevant. It's what happens on the park, but given your association in the past with Brendan, is it all a factor this week, the fact that head-to-head you against him, not so much as boys on the park as well?
I just think I think Macca and I are very similar philosophies to footy, and that probably stems from the Mark Thompson era, at Geelong. So the things I think that we both value would be very similar. So that's probably where I think there might be similarities in how we coach. But obviously you've got 2 very different squads with different strengths. So there'll be how we can take advantage of things that they don't do so well, and they'll be trying to take advantages of the things that we don't do quite so well. So whether they can marry up, we'll have to wait and see. But we've got a lot of respect for the Dogs. I mean, they're a very good outfit.
What's the latest with Scotty Thompson? Is he fit to play this week?
Yeah, he'll play 200th game, which is a great achievement. And I know, anytime anyone plays 200 games, you'd hope that the group would lift for that individual. I know sometimes you can read too much into milestone games, but I know our boys will be pretty wound up. He's got a lot of respect within the change rooms, and I know the players are keen to do well for his 200th.
What's your philosophy on the talk about resting players happened at Geelong last year, and with such a deep squad you've got now, will you consider that at all during the year, and if so, when?
Oh, you have to consider it, but whether we pull the trigger on it, it's a different question, because we probably can't flirt with our form, and the minute we start to get a little bit fancy with how we pick the side, we might get hurt. So we're certainly picking our best side available at the moment. Come round 10, round 12, round 18, it might be a different story when you look at players' wellnesses, their GPS numbers. If we've still got depth in the squad and a fit list, it might be a different question then. But at the moment, we're certainly picking our best 22.
Did you see the benefits at Geelong?
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. I mean, I've read quite a few player comments about it over the last week or so, and I tend to agree with the model used in English Premier League and soccer throughout the world, where you've got so many games that are high intensity. You can't expect to play at that level through 26 weeks. I think Geelong did it well last year, the way they were able to almost time their run and have a fit, healthy squad in form at the right time of the year. But we've still got a long way to go before we can start to get to that stage. We'll still pick our best 22 each week, I'm sure.
Any chance that you might make some changes to the side, or is they locked in?
There's always a chance. We'll look at Western Bulldogs. We've reviewed our game and been through each player individually. As I mentioned before, we'll look at our strengths versus their weaknesses, and perhaps vice versa. But at the same time, it'd be difficult to make too many changes, I think, to what was which was a pretty good performance on Saturday night.
Brendan, I think West Coast's height probably stretched the Dogs a little bit. Can you get that same advantage?
Yeah, it's a good question, because they don't have a couple of their key defenders in, which are big losses for them. You take out Williams and Morris. They're 2 key outs for the Dogs. So, but at the same time, we've got 2 key forwards who are in pretty good form, and I'm sure that'll be a big story leading up to the preview of this game, will be how the Dogs defenders will handle our key forwards. So that'll be the game within the game, I'm sure.
There's going to be a lot of attention, obviously, on Walker and Tippett, but do you think that attention means that the importance of the small forwards around them increases? Yeah,
without question. Without question. I mean, one week it might be Tippett and Walker, the next week it might be Porplesia, Callanan, Petrenko. It's one of those things where you have to certainly share the load. You can't just rely on your key targets kicking the majority of your goals. That probably is the way the game's moved a little bit. You know, that even spread of goal kickers. If you can get 10 to 12 individual goal kickers on a different round, you're going to go a long way to winning the game.
Is that a huge asset for you, having Callanan kick 2-5?
Yep.
We all know what Porplesia's capable of.
Yeah, and I think also too, goals from the midfield. You know, the midfielders that can press in and kick goals too are certainly worth their weight in gold. So we've got some players in there that have got the capabilities to do that as well. So we'll look to share the load, like I said, and keep that balance and not just rely on Tippett and Walker every week to kick the majority of our score.
Following on from that, you must have been pretty impressed with reports about Timmy McIntyre.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. He's ready to play. I mean, he's one of those players, and you could throw a blanket over another 8 or 10 players who are fit and in form and ready to play. And certainly Tim McIntyre, who's kicking goals for Sturt every week, definitely falls under that category.
Do you feel for Matt Rendell with the latest Jason Misford developments?
I certainly feel for Matt Rendell, yeah, but this is a separate incident, you know, and that's between, I guess, the AFL and the Melbourne Football Club, and we'll certainly be focusing on our footy club, but yeah, I guess I can't comment on that.
Would you hope that Rendell can get a job in footy again?
Of course, yeah, I hope Matty's he's too much of a talent to not be involved in talent ID.
What are your thoughts on Good Friday footy, personally?
It's a strange one. I don't really have a strong opinion on it, to be honest. I know we're one of the few codes that doesn't participate in Good Friday footy around the world. I know there's, you know, the baseball's starting, and I know there's going to be soccer on in England, and throughout the world there seems to be sporting events on. I know the golf's on as well, so I don't really have a strong opinion on it, to be honest. I know the SANFL are playing. I'll be down at Noarlunga watching Sturt v South, but I don't mind. I'm not too.
Are we giving the other codes a bit of a free kick?
Maybe. I know North Melbourne are really keen to. They've been pushing for the last few years to play a standalone game on Good Friday, but yeah, I know that myself and our club don't have a strong opinion on it.
You have to think that eventually it's going to happen, and whoever can own it, I guess it's going to be a big win for them.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think whoever can get the first opportunity to play a game on Good Friday, I'm sure there'll be a big crowd, and who that'll be, I'm not sure.
Ryan Griffin comes back this week, but it looks like he'll be wearing a sort of a cast on his little finger. It's still not 100%. Where do you sit on players targeting injuries? You know, see them if he's got a sore finger hitting it or bumping a sore shoulder. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, that's a fine line, because you certainly look for any advantage you can on the opposition, but I think exposing players' injuries is probably crossing that line. So I certainly wouldn't be promoting any of my players to go out and targeting an opponent's injury, if that makes sense.